Hey, thank you for clicking this video. Please support the channel by subscribing to the channel. I'm trying to grow the channel. I want these videos, these math videos, to reach out to those that really needs them. So all I'm asking is just click that subscribe button. And if you have the time, that'll be nice if you can type in some comments in the comment section down below and just give me some likes. And that way the channel just builds up and so on. So let's begin by filling in the square boxes or squares by subtracting the integers. So let's go ahead and start with -5 minus 5. So let me go ahead and write that down. -5 minus 5 or +5 equals. All right, so we are subtracting two numbers with opposite signs. It's easier if we can just change this to the additional problem or make this to an adding problem. So that way we can use the rule of sign for adding opposite signs, or rule of sign for adding the same sign. But we don't have a problem with the same sign or signs. We have a problem with opposite signs. So we need to use the rule of sign for adding opposite sign. But before we go there, we need to use this rule of sign for subtracting, which there are two simple steps to take. The first step is to change the operation from subtracting to adding. So we'll bring this -5 down and then change the minus to a adding sign. And then the next one, or the next step, this step 2, we just finished step 1. Step 2 is to flip the sign of the second integer. So the second integer is the +5. So they want us to flip the sign to a negative and bring down the number. There you go. So we went from +5 to -5. Cool. Now we have an additional problem here. We're adding two numbers with same signs. So we're using the rule of sign for adding same sign. So all we have to do is, if they both have the same sign, we add them both and keep the same sign. So 5 plus 5 is 10, and then we keep the same sign. So the answer is -10. Look at that, super easy. All right, let's do the next problem. Now we have -5 minus 3 or +3. Let me just write +3. It's the same thing. I just want to show the positive sign next to the 3 equals. All right, so -5 minus +3. So let's go ahead and use the same rule of sign for subtracting. So we need to change that minus to a positive, and then the +3 will turn into a -3, and then just bring the -5 down. And those steps are up there to the right corner. So the first thing is change the operation from subtracting to adding. I did that. Flip the sign of the second integer. I did that as well. +3 to -3. Now we have an addition problem. -5 plus -3 equals. Cool, right? So we're adding the same. So both numbers have the same sign. So we're adding. We're using this rule of sign for adding, same sign. So 5 plus 3 gives us 8. And then we keep the same sign. So the answer is -8. because we're adding two numbers with the same sign. So we just add both, keep the same sign. Simple. Next problem. Erase that and this as well. All right. -5 minus -2. -5 minus -2. Again, let's just bring this -5 down, turn this into a positive or a adding sign from a minus, and then flip this to a +2. So now we're adding two numbers with opposite signs, so we have to use the rule of sign for adding opposites or opposite signs. So just to make some space, let me just write this problem up here. There. So we need to find the absolute value of -5. That's the rule. Identify the absolute values for both numbers or for both integers. So the absolute value of -5 is 5, and the absolute value of 2 is 2. And then the next step is to subtract the absolute values from large to small. So 5 is bigger than 2, so we subtract 5 minus 2, which is 3. And then the last step is to take away the sign from the original number that gave you the larger absolute value. So 5 is the larger absolute value, and the original number will be this -5. So we'll take that negative sign and give it to our 2, or the answer. So give it to the 2, and the answer becomes -2. So the answer is -2. Oh, sorry, it's -3. I apologize. Let me erase that. We give that sign to the 3. So the answer becomes -3. -3. Let me go ahead and erase all this. And we're done with the first row. All right, next row. We have 10 minus 5. 10 minus +5. Oops. There we go. Okay. Again, let's just change the minus to a positive. Flip the 5 or the +5 to -5. And now we're adding two numbers with opposite signs, so we need to use the rule of sign for adding opposite signs. Now, mentally, we can just say we know the absolute value of 10 is 10, and the absolute value of -5 is 5. And then that takes care of the first step. And then the second step is to subtract the large absolute value minus the smaller absolute value. So we finish that step. So 10 minus 5 is 5. And then the last step is to take away the sign from the original number that gave you the larger absolute value. So 10 is bigger than 5, so we take that positive or that invisible positive sign right next to the 10 and then give it to the 5. And that's the answer, +5. Or we can just write 5. Easy. All right. Erase all this. There we go. All right, next problem. We have 10 minus 3. 10 minus positive 3. Okay, same thing. We bring down the 10, we change the minus to a positive, and then we flip the positive 3 to a negative 3. And then mentally, we know the absolute value of 10 is 10, and the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. So that checks the first step. The second step is to subtract the large absolute value minus the small absolute value. So 10 is bigger or larger than 3, and then we just subtract 10 minus 3. So 10 take away 3, that is 7. And then we take the sign of the original number that gave us the larger absolute value. So we take that positive from the original 10 and give it to the 7. So the answer is positive 7 or just 7. Okay. Last problem for that row. So we have it's 10 minus negative 2. There we go. 10 minus negative 2. So this one, we just bring that 10 down, positive. Now it's a positive 2. And we just need to follow this rule. Same sign, add them, keep the same sign. So 10 plus 2 is 12. And then we keep the same sign, which is positive 12. Easy. So the answer is 12. And we're done with that row. Perfect. The last row, negative 2 minus 5, or positive 5. Negative 2 plus positive 5 equals, oops, we're subtracting. My mistake. Negative 2 minus positive 5. We need to change that like this. So bring down the negative 2, change the operation or the minus to a positive, or I mean not a positive, a additional symbol or an adding symbol, that plus sign, and then flip the second integer. So positive 5 becomes negative 5. And now mentally, we know the absolute value of negative 2 is 2, and the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. And we know 5, the absolute value of 5 will be bigger than 2. So we are going to, oh wait, my mistake. Okay, I'm looking at two numbers, and we're adding two numbers that have the same sign. So we have to use the rule of sign for adding the same sign. Sorry about that. So 2 plus 5 is 7. And we keep the same sign. So the answer is negative 7. Easy. So the rule states that when two numbers that you're adding, if you're adding two numbers and they have the same sign, you add them both and keep the same sign. So negative 7 is the answer. Negative 7. Sorry about that. Now, for practice, let's say we have a 2, a positive 2, and a negative 5. Let's just do this for practice. Let's just practice. Let's keep it positive and negative 5. So positive 2 minus negative 5. So we bring down the 2. We change the operation to a positive or an additional symbol. And then we flip the -5 to a positive 5. Hey, the answer is 7, positive 7. Cool. All right, let's finish this. Finish the last 2. Okay. -2 minus 3. -2 minus positive 3. Let me erase all this and just bring down the problem for more space. So -2, oops, -2 minus positive 3. That is a -2 minus positive 3. Okay, so we bring down the -2. We change the minus to a addition sign. And then we flip the positive 3 to a -3. Now, both numbers, or we're adding 2 numbers with the same sign, so your answer should be -5. You add them both and keep the same sign. So the answer is -5. All right, one more and we're done. Erase all this. -2 minus -2. Ooh. -2 minus -2. Separate these 2 numbers. All right. -2 minus -2. We have to bring down the -2, change the operation to addition, and flip the -2 to a positive 2 equals. Now, both numbers are the same. They have opposite signs. So anytime you're adding 2 numbers with opposite signs, you follow this rule. Now, mentally, we know -2, the absolute of -2 is 2, and the absolute value of 2, or positive 2, is 2. So we can just subtract both. However, both numbers are the same, so we can't say which number is larger than the other. So these 2 would just cancel out, or 2 minus 2 becomes 0. And so your answer is 0. Because you can't say 2 is bigger than 2. They're both the same number, and you just have to subtract both of them, and it's going to give you 0. So there you go. We just completed or filled in the squares by subtracting the integers. Thank you for watching. Bye, Jensine.